What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're looking at Severance episode 3 in perpetuity. If this is your first time watching, how this video is going to go down is that I'm going to do a recap of the whole entire episode. We're going to talk about pretty much everything step by step about what happened pretty quickly. I'll probably give my quick thoughts on some things, maybe elaborate on a couple of important things, definitely highlight some of the big things. And then at the end, I'll give my rating for the episode, and then we'll talk about some theories. So this is a show that definitely has room for plenty of theories, and I'm excited to hear from you guys down in the comments. So if you guys end up enjoying this video, please make sure to like it. Please subscribe if you're new. But let's take a look at Severance episode 3. So the beginning of this episode continues right from where we left off at the end of episode 2. We see Petey talking to the Audi of Mark. We see that Petey has some sort of weird illusions that's happening with right now. He has some sort of like sickness or illness in his mind to where he sort of goes in and out of reality at times. He can't really understand what's reality or, what's the past. His vision just keeps going in and out. So we see him talking to Mark, but then it cuts and we sort of see him now working in the office. We sort of go back and forth. And this will be like a reoccurring thing that happens to him throughout the episode. That's where we start out. Then once he's able to calm himself down, we get a really important conversation between him and Mark. So many, I don't want to say questions were answered in this scene, but they gave us a lot of hints about what's actually going on here. So Petey says that he's with a group of people that know about Severance and they're going to do something about it. So Mark sort of questions him and says, like, who's they? Like, who are these people that you're working with? He says it's not the people that we saw in the last episode where Mark confronts those kids on the street talking about Severance, how it's such a bad thing. He says it's not those kids, it's someone else, right? So right away, this is like our first little theory that we could dive into is like, who is they? Like who's Petey working with? Like who's this group? Like, what could really be at play here? So right in the beginning, we already start to have, a couple of hints about what's going on. He also pretty much tells Mark that he's murdering people for 8 hours a day. This is one of the big things in the first 2 episodes that I want to know about. Is like, what were those numbers doing? Like what were they doing in the actual office with those numbers? How we saw them putting all these weird bigger numbers or numbers that look different to them in certain bins. Like, what was that all about? I sort of had an idea, like maybe they were killing someone. That was like one of my theories. But now it's sort of confirmed. Petey says like you're murdering people for 8 hours a day. Does he actually mean like in a legitimate sense? Is, are these people murdering others? I sort of think so, but like now why? Like why are they having these people murder others, for the whole day? Like what's actually going on there? And then Petey starts to sort of lose it again. He talks about this girl named June. June is his daughter. We don't really get too much here. I'm hoping that we get a little bit more of how June sort of plays into all this. But it just sort of gives Petey like a little bit of a motive or some background on his character that he does have a daughter named June. After this, Mark goes upstairs. This is where we see his neighbor, who's Harmony, who's his boss in the Severance world. But in the Audi world, it's just another name, but I just call her like, Mark's neighbor. And she's watching him. And this raises the question for us as the audience, is that is Harmony an Audi? Like, has she fully severed herself as her Audi self and her Severance self? And it's not really confirmed until later that Harmony is in fact not severed. She's sort of like the same person in both worlds. But at this moment where she's looking at Mark, I still had my doubts. I was still wondering to myself, like, is she an Audi or is she not at this moment? But we'll get to our confirmation later on. Let's keep going. So after this, we have another conversation between Mark and Petey. This is where we sort of delve into that same sort of theme that we heard in the first episodes, where Mark sort of explains that maybe what he's doing, he wants to do it. He lost his wife in a car accident. That's what he said. I thought in the first episode, I thought maybe he lost a daughter. It turns out he lost his wife. So we get the confirmation here about like why he actually took this job. It's because his wife died in a car accident, so he doesn't want to think about that. He's probably all depressed, anxious, and all that stuff. But Petey sort of tells him, like, I remember seeing you in the office, and you'd come in with red eyes. And so he was trying to tell Mark that, like, the hurt followed him even in the severed world. Like, you can't really escape that. His other self still felt that pain. He just didn't know what it was. And so Mark sort of, like, looks down, and he's, has to sort of process that. That is such an interesting concept. There are so many different interesting concepts throughout this whole episode that sort of hinted at us. And but I love this one right here. Sort of puts some things into perspective for Mark that, like maybe what he's doing is not the way to deal with trauma and loss. Just to forget about it is not going to help. It's probably just going to make things worse. And now that his other self even feels that, now he's probably thinking in his mind, like, why am I even doing this? So plants that little seed there to grow probably into something later on. After this, Mark goes to leave for work. As he leaves, he sees Harmony outside. She's like has a hair dryer. She's trying to heat up her porch because it was snowing. I don't know, like I guess she's just trying to like play the part here. I don't know why she was doing that. But Mark sort of leaves, and once he leaves, her face gets serious and she just puts it away. So this is where I started to think like, okay, she's definitely not an outie right now. She's like the same person in both worlds. There's just another hint. So once Mark gets to work, we get to find out about Helly's resignation request. Now this is huge. Helly is such an important character in this show, and there's so much that goes on with her here. But first, her resignation request, which she put in because that's what she's allowed to do. The higher ups, Harmony, they said if your outie wants you to leave, then you can leave. So she puts in her resignation request. Turns out that it's denied. So her outie doesn't want her to leave. And so she can't really come to terms with that. She wants to leave. Now, for the rest of this episode, she's determined to let her outie know that she wants to leave and that to never come back here again. A question for you guys here. Do you actually believe that they give this resignation request to her outie? Do you actually believe that? Or do you think that Harmony or someone else or even the council or whoever, the board or whatever, doesn't even let the outie see that? They just deny it right away. And they tell her that it's the outie when it actually wasn't. I kind of still want to believe that's the outie, but let me know down below what your theory is on that. So after this, we see Harmony before she goes to work. We see Mark's brother-in-law drop off his book to Mark's house, right? We then see Harmony go and take his mail, and she sort of brings it back, and they want to look for like hidden messages in there. I'm still confused on this. Like I don't know why she's doing that. I mean, I guess she pretty much says it's look for hidden messages, but like why look for hidden messages? Like maybe she thinks that Mark could have told the brother-in-law something. Like I don't know, like that part still sort of confuses me, but I understand like maybe she doesn't want any sort of other influences on him besides the company. I'm not really sure though. But here's where we also get the confirmation that Harmony doesn't have an outie. She goes into Mark's house. I guess she has a key. Petey's still in the basement. He has like some weird illusions right before this, but he's able to like escape out of the house. She goes downstairs and she gets a phone call, right? And it's about Helly and it's about the request. And so she's talking about Helly in the outie world. So this pretty much confirms that she doesn't have two identities like everyone else that works there. And I'm still not sure if Milchick is like that as well or not. I feel like he does have an outie persona. I think he does. I think he's severed in a way. But she's not. So at least that's confirmed here at this moment. But back at the workplace, we see Helly is writing on her arms, "Let me out." And Mark sort of tries to stop her. This is another interesting concept here. Everything with Helly now and like what goes on with her and like inside her mind, it's different, because when you expect something like this in this world, you expect the people in the office to maybe sort of accept it. They're in this world, they just work and work and work, and that's all they know. But Helly senses that something's wrong. She wants to get out, and now she can't, and it's going to be driving her crazy now. And right before her big attempt to escape at the end, she tries to like swallow like a pill with a message in it so that maybe she could like shit it out in the outie world and her outie self could find it. But Mark sort of stops her as well from doing that. That was just like another attempt for her escape. But after this scene, we get a really weird scene where they bump into Christopher Walken and the other girl that's part of this department. There's obviously some sort of beef between the departments. At least in Dylan's eyes, he talks about the coup. There was a coup and there was bleeding and like a lot of fighting. I think this could maybe relate to Petey and like his flashbacks, maybe like how he sort of escaped. Like maybe that's like what he's referring to. But Christopher Walken, this was such a weird scene. I don't even know how to even explain it. The tension was like so weird. John Turturro and Christopher Walken, both their characters, do they have some sort of like romantic relationship? I think they sort of do, because even in the trailer we see them and like they have their heads together. John Turturro definitely sort of admires him, or it looks like he's maybe like in love with Christopher Walken or something like that. So that's going to be another relationship to really sort of just take a look at, like see what's actually going on there. It could be something that's pretty, funny or cool or whatever. After this, we go back to Harmony, who shows up at work. Some girl's waiting there, and she says that the board wants to talk to her about Petey. And so, they talk about Petey, and there's some stuff like that. But my main interest with this scene is that why is the board using this girl to talk to Harmony? Now, the obvious thing could be like, everyone has like a middleman, like someone that, they are so above everything that they can have someone to talk to Harmony for them, right? But then I started thinking, I'm like, maybe it was like maybe there's like a language barrier, like, and that girl's like a translator. And then my mind started to wonder after that, and I was like, maybe, if she doesn't understand language, maybe it's aliens. Maybe this whole thing is like aliens control this severed thing. I might talk about that a little bit towards the end with some theories. I know it's pretty outlandish. I don't want to go that far. I just want to plant a little seed in your head about aliens. I don't think it's going to happen. But it just made me think of that at this scene. But after this scene, we see where Irving is taking this group. And sort of like this, like, sort of, I like to see it as like a historical museum for them. We get to see like the CEOs of this company, the Eagans, right? So the first one they see, I think, is like James Egan. We get to see what looks like maybe wax statues of them, or maybe it's like their actual dead bodies that are stuffed. And we get to see like voices, and they talk about how, they want. I need to rewatch the scene because they talk about some weird stuff about like saving the world, like how what they're doing is really big and stuff like that. And there's probably is a lot of hints there. One big thing that I researched and I kind of saw, one of the names that they actually come across is called like Keir Egan, and Keir means like the dark one, and then Egan means like bright-eyed little one, I think, or something like that. Maybe that could play into something like that, like what those names actually mean. That's why I think that maybe it could be some sort of like alien thing, cult thing. You could play into like Illuminati sort of thing. I think the thing about this is that I think if it was just like a secret society, like if the board was just like a group of like elite people, I think it would just be a little bit too obvious and predictable. Aliens is also a little bit outlandish, and it would be a little bit predictable and dumb. So I'm hoping it's something totally different that we don't even think of. But we get to see like this replica home of Keir Egan, and Mark has like this bingo game that he has like lighten the mood. We see that Irving doesn't like that. It seems like he like respects the heck out of this family and what they've done, and he sort of sees them as like this Jesus type figures. Even Helly or Mark even walks in and they say like, who does this guy think he is, Jesus? Or like they say some line like that. And oh no, it's like they walk in and Haley's like, Jesus, like she's in awe of what's happening. And he's like, no, not Jesus, Keir Egan, or whatever he says, right? And so that just shows like he sees him in like this Jesus like figure, like he respects them and stuff like that. And it's just shown through him getting mad at Mark. But after this, it's probably like one of my favorite scenes of this episode. We see that Helly sort of makes a bolt for the door, like she tries to escape again, and she's able to grab a fire extinguisher. She breaks through the door, like the glass of the door, and the alarm goes off. And so we see her have the note that says never come back here. And it looks like she's trying to go through the glass window with the note. And I think what she's doing here is that she's trying to become severed right at that moment. She's trying to get into her outie form right at that moment so that she could see the note that says never come back here, And she's trying to accomplish that by like sticking her head out, but obviously she can't. And she can't see the note either. And I think that when she cuts her arm on the glass, I think she does that on purpose so that her outie form will maybe investigate like what's actually going on here. If you think like if your whole arm gets freaking severed by glass or gets cut by glass, you're gonna think like, hey, something went wrong. Let me maybe look into it. So I think she maybe cut her arm on purpose. But after this, Mark is able to grab her and stop her. She gets brought in front of Milchick, and she's sort of being forced to apologize in some way. But they don't let her off the hook easy. They want her to actually feel sorry for her actions. Harmony's even in the background, and Milchick gives her a look like, oh, is what she said, is that a real apology? And Harmony sort of like shakes her head, and they have her keep going. So there's obviously something here. Maybe it's just your basic form of punishment that they want to do. Or maybe there's something else that's much deeper that I can't really think of right now. But while this is going on, we see Mark, and he is changing out the photos of the photos that they had with Petey when they worked in the office. Now it's the ones with Helly, right? And so in the last photo, he takes out the frame, and he sees that there's that secret note that has the map on it. And now Petey, throughout this whole episode, he's sort of been wandering around with this same map, and I guess he's looking for the workplace, right? Like the place where they do the severance. I guess that's what he's looking for. And Mark finds the exact same map. And so I have the map right here. This is like the best image I can get from the show. There's a lot to dissect here, a lot to look at. There's plenty of theories that can come from this. I can't even understand like what I'm even looking at. There's one place called like the Coil of Doom. Who knows like what that department is or like what they do there. There's so much that could be going on in this place that we have no inkling of even knowing, and could even be elaborated in future seasons. I don't know how far they want this story to go, but it's definitely interesting and cool to look at this, maybe decipher it, dissect it if anyone wants to. But after this, we see Petey in the gas station. He is like, he wants to get something from the refrigerated area, but he's screaming for tokens. Like, he thinks that he's still in the Severance workplace. And in the break room, they use tokens to get their snacks, right? We saw in the last episode. So he's sort of like in and out of his illusions, like the sickness in his head or whatever. So he's screaming for tokens. The other person obviously has no idea what's going on. The dude's bleeding from his nose. He's obviously at his breaking point right now. But back to Mark, we see him leave the office. I love this sort of subtle change that the show does when he's going down the elevator. It's like a very subtle camera change that lets you know like he's now entering his outie self. And I think it's so smart. There were plenty of awesome techniques in this episode in terms of like camera work and creating tension. I love that. It impressed me. You'll probably see in the rating I added that. And so he goes back home. He sees that Petey is no longer in his basement. So he goes out driving. He sees cop cars. Follows the cop cars, leads him to the gas station where Petey collapsed. And so like this part was a little bit weird. Like he sees Petey has collapsed onto the floor, and instead of like rushing over, you know, like maybe that would have exposed him. Maybe he doesn't want to do that, but he just drives away and he goes back home. And I thought it was a little bit weird. Like, why did he just leave? But then he goes back home. He hears a phone buzzing. It's sort of hard to decipher, but I think on the screen it says blocked. And then like the episode just sort of ends with the phone buzzing, and that's it. So my rating for this episode is a 3.8 out of 5. Anyone that saw my last 2 episode reviews, I wasn't fully on board with this show for the first 2 episodes. There are so many shows out there where like they're trying to be smart. They think they can do like this mystery thing and give you like barely any hints, and at the end we're supposed to be like, oh my god, like this was so shocking. And so I thought like maybe this show could be like that. So I needed to see a little bit more before I could decipher if this was something I really wanted to check out. I think this episode sort of put all those doubts away. It seemed like every single scene had a purpose, whether it was unraveling this mystery, telling the story in a very, great way in terms of like tension, adding some more depth to all these characters, get to know more background. And it drops little hints. It doesn't full on answer a bunch of questions. If anything, it just gives us more questions, but it gives us hints at what maybe is going on and lets our minds sort of wander with theories and stuff like that. And I love coming up with theories for show. This is definitely a show you can have a lot of fun with theories. It's always good to remember not to let the theories get in the way in the actual story that they're trying to tell. Just because a show doesn't have a theory that you want it to happen doesn't mean what their story that they were trying to tell was bad or not what you wanted. So I'm always down to come up with crazy, outlandish theories like the alien one. But when it all comes down to it, I always like to focus on what story they're trying to tell. And if my theories are right, then that's cool. And if they're not, then that's fine as well. But like I said, this episode was great. We got to see more insight into Mark. Sort of figure out like the whole Audi Severance thing. I think that was a little bit more cleared up. The things with Harmony, we got an answer on like sort of what her whole thing is. Like she just doesn't have an Audi form. So I guess like once you're pretty high up, you're just a couple things, but you can definitely tell that she doesn't know everything because the board. There is a board out there. We didn't know that there was even a board. So the fact that that's out there means that Harmony is nowhere even close to being in charge of anything. She probably doesn't even have a lot of answers herself. And then we got everything with Helly, how she was denied the request. To see her trying to escape through a whole episode, and at the end, that was crazy. Some stuff with Irving. Petey, Petey's not going to be dead, I don't think. We still need to find out answers about June, his daughter. So there's so much to dissect. There's so much to look into. This is just the beginning. I'm happy that we still have a lot of answers. Like nothing is pretty much answered at all. But that is pretty much it. I'm just honestly excited to hear about what you guys have to say about this episode. Did you guys enjoy it? Did you love it? This was definitely one that I'm going to be recommending now to people. This episode sort of solidified that this is something that I can go out to someone and say, hey, this is worth checking out. If you're into mystery, if you're into unraveling this sort of like sci-fi-ish sort of world, definitely check out Severance. The first 2 episodes didn't get me on board, but this one did. But let me know down below what you guys think of this episode. Let me know any theories you have. There's going to be a plethora of theories to have after this. So I'm excited to check it out. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please make sure to like it. Please subscribe if you're new. But I will see you all in the next video. Have a great rest of the day.